Let's kick off. Hello, everyone. Really wonderful to see you all today. I'm Michelle Lee, International Partnerships Lead, part of the All of Government AgriTech Task Force, and I'm based out of Singapore. Welcome to AgriTech NZ's Global AgriFutures event. And today is actually the third and final in our series for this year. The GAF, as what we'd like to call it, because it tends to be a mouthful, GAF is designed to bring innovation experts, industry, and thought leaders together to explore new challenges and ways to solve them. And the current arrangement is each month, AgriTech NZ and the New Zealand government would invite international guests to spark a topic for discussion. So these events are designed to be very highly interactive, to facilitate exchange of ideas and new connections for those involved. Today's Spark topic is perspectives from different innovation experts, and we're very privileged to have special guests from Yara International, Pilot 44, and Sprout, who are here to share the insider view of innovation and what it means for all of us, and to open the discussion on how complementary relationships can happen. So just a quick intro of our guests. I'll first start with Yara International. Yara operates an integrated business model with around 17,000 employees and operations in over 60 countries. Their current ambition is focused on growing a climate-positive food future, and they have taken the lead in developing digital farming tools for precision farming, in addition to working very closely with partners throughout the food value chain in order to improve the efficiency and sustainability of food production. So I'd like to introduce our guests from Yara International. We have Michael, who is Commercial Director, ANZ. Hi, Michael. We also have David. David, are you there?
I'm here.
David Spencer, Agronomy and Crop Solutions Lead. Hello, David.
Hi, go Michelle. Hi all.
And we have Clive Blacker. Clive, are you there? Clive is Director of Map of Ag UK. I heard you briefly. Hi, Clive.
Hi.
Good to see you.
I'm here.
Good to see you, and thank you for staying up in the wee hours of the morning. So everyone, Clive is based in the UK, and he's from Precision Decisions. It's part of the Map of Ag group, and he is Yara's end sensor specialist. So thank you for staying up, Clive.
It's a pleasure.
We also have with us Marisa, VP of Farming Solutions from Africa and Asia. Hello, Marisa. And Mr. Loh Kim Huat, who is Business Excellence Director, who comes with 20-year experience in Southeast Asia, China, Belgium, and Singapore. Hey, Kim Huat.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
I'd next like to go to Pilot 44. So Pilot 44 helps large consumer-facing companies accelerate innovation and drive growth. Pilot 44 is based in San Fran, Switzerland, Singapore, Australia, and some of the clients include P&G, Nestle, Danone, Suntory, Coca-Cola, European Partners, General Mills, just to name a few. Their clients come to them for digital innovation, venture building, training, education services. So I'd like to introduce Johnny, who is Managing Partner of APAC from Pilot 44 Labs. Hi, Johnny.
Hi, everybody.
Last but not least, we have the well-known and appreciated Sprout Agritech. And we all know Sprout, investment company breaking new ground for ag tech and food tech entrepreneurs through accelerator and seed stage investment activity. From Sprout, we have CEO Gil Meron. Hello, Gil.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Michelle, and thanks for having me.
I guess it's a delight to have you with us today, and we hope you have fun getting to know everyone over the next 1.5 hours.
Looking forward.
Now, before I invite Brandon O'Connell, Chief Executive of AgriTech NZ, to say a few words and headline what we aim to get out of today's innovation-themed networking session, I'll just like to quickly run through the event flow. The session will unfold in 3 parts. So the first would be a panel discussion, followed by questions and open discussions, which will take us close to the hour. After which, we'll break into smaller social groups for deeper conversations, before we'll whisk everyone back again, just 5 minutes before the close, just so that we can round up the session together. So if we're all ready, Brandon, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Michelle. Tēnā koutou katoa. Special welcome indeed to all our guests. Thank you for joining. Special welcome to all our members and supporters, and great to have everybody here today. These sessions are turning out to be really excellent sessions, and so it's great to be able to try and share my screen for a start. It's great to be able to have everybody here and drive some discussions around what's going on in the sector. I would like to give a bit of an overview, I guess, around agritech innovation in and from New Zealand as a bit of context for today. And so, you know, we speak of New Zealand having a world of expertise in one country, and that's very true when you look at the makeup of our ecosystem here. You know, we have a healthy collection of research and education providers. We have the expertise and services that look at supporting a lot of our innovators and our agri-tech developers and the agri-businesses that are there. We have a growing and healthy environment from an investor perspective, especially in the last couple of years. Several things have changed to see better levels of connection and better levels of investment here in New Zealand, with some agri-tech dedicated funds, some deep tech funds, and some good private equity activity as well for later stage businesses. And we have, you know, a healthy ecosystem of 400, 500 businesses, whether they be established businesses or whether they be earlier stage businesses. And in New Zealand, we definitely have a larger number of probably earlier stage businesses. And we don't have 6 governments, but we do have 6 government agencies who have quite a focus on agri-tech and the growth of agri-tech as a sector. If we were to look at, you know, where our strengths really lie, without doubt, our history and our capabilities come from the livestock and pasture space. So that's a leading technology area where we've seen some of our larger current entities establish themselves globally. And more, we have a growing horticulture, aquaculture, and forestry tech environment. Underpinning all of those is themes across clean tech and biotech. And we look at sort of the type of applications that they're developing, cover a multitude of problems to be solved and applications that are brought to solve them, with technologies that underpin those problems to be solved, mapping across. And I think all of this will probably be similar to many other ecosystems around the world. And what's important here is, I guess, that we have a complete ecosystem here in New Zealand that now has everything it needs to both build on its current successes and look at what the future for agri-tech from New Zealand can really mean. We have current revenues across all entities of about 1.4 billion, and we talk about there being sort of a 4 times impact when we think of growth on that type of number. First and foremost, there's the domestic benefits of amplifying, improving, and celebrating everything that's good about New Zealand primary industry. Major GDP contributor for New Zealand, a real strength, of course, in terms of what we do in terms of food and fiber. And agri-tech and the innovations around agriculture obviously play a big part in protecting that, in growing that. A secondary local benefit, of course, is when we look at where our agri-tech businesses are actually located, they're all around the country. So we're seeing regional development happening in terms of the types of developments that come from Palmerston North, Tauranga, Hamilton, Nelson, Christchurch, and that's where our agri-tech businesses really come from. But of course, they're connecting internationally, and that's really what we're here to talk about today. When we see the global focus on agri-tech for well-known reasons in terms of feeding the world's population and protecting the planet, all of the same drivers that is driving investment and problem solving into those areas is what New Zealand businesses are looking to have an impact on. And so when we look at the potential for agri-tech and we look at similar economies, we know that there's massive potential for what agri-tech in and from New Zealand can really mean going forward. And yet there's a few things we need to consider, and it's part of why we're here today. When we talk about agri-tech in New Zealand, some of our challenges is to try and look beyond our current farming systems in New Zealand and identify the problems that transcend just what happens in New Zealand, but amplifies what we've learned in terms of our love of the land and our ability to do translations between biological issues and the digital world and the physical world. And so everything that makes New Zealand agri-tech innovators so great, looking at those international connections so that we're not just, when we're powered by a place, doesn't mean we're in this place. It means we're taking everything that we've learned here, everything that we understand about caring for the land and caring for food systems, and finding and solving those problems that transcend what might happen on our own borders here. So today, making those international connections, continuing the discussions around what's happening overseas and what we can learn from innovation perspectives from other players is a really important part of that journey as we extend those horizons. There's been a lot of talk recently, and we talk about it in New Zealand, about either this tall poppy syndrome, or examples of when we've done missions overseas, and we notice that there are agri-tech innovators overseas who arguably, in some people's minds, don't necessarily have as good a solution or as good an approach as we're seeing in New Zealand, and yet they're getting significantly more investment, and they're taking a different attitude to what's happened. And so I think part of our challenge in sort of reaching out for some of these international connections is understanding what's possible. It's raising our aspirations in terms of what other agri-tech innovators around the world are achieving, and making sure that we're bringing our best and brightest to that. And we're seeing plenty of success. So if we just look recently around some of the international connections and some of the things that are happening just in the last sort of 6-month period, we've seen Abacus Bio continue to develop their relationships with overseas group like Bayer Crop Science. We're part of the one of our earlier global AgriFutures sessions. We're seeing Way Beyond expand their global footprint, and again look at their international connections. We're seeing investment coming through from Hector as an earlier stage business, from Blue Lab as a later stage business positioning itself in growth. We're seeing new innovation models from some of our established businesses, with Gallagher and Trimax both doing effectively some open innovation, some external investments, and bringing them into their ecosystems, with Gallagher's investment in eShepherd and Trimax's family-owned business investments in machines at work. And we're seeing new business models as well when we see some of our research getting commercialized and looking at new paths for how that science makes it into the market, with investments in Sentient Bio coming through Sprout and getting invested by Finisterre. So we're seeing lots of good progress. And if there's something that's common to these successes, it is that they're making connections, they're finding investment. And so I'm looking forward to today's discussions, understanding exactly what the international perspectives are on innovation. And I know we've got a great lineup. And so I'll hand back to you, Michelle, to get us started.
Thank you, Brendan. Okay, everyone, moderating today's panel discussion is Graham Soloway, Sector Partner at NZTE. Graham heads up NZTE's AgriTech ITP workstreams and is one of the biggest champions of AgriTech industry capabilities. Graham, over to you to kick off the panel discussion.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Brendan, for that excellent summary, and welcome you all here today to our session and our panel discussion. So I'm going to, at least virtually, ask Johnny and Gil and Johnny, Gil, and Michael, I think, and the Yara team, to be available on a virtual stage, if you like, and we'll have a quick discussion over the next 30 minutes or so around some of the aspects of innovation as these organisations see it. So I'm going to just kick this off by asking our panelists, and Johnny, and I'll start off with you. Just what you explain to me, what does innovation mean to you and your organisation and your clients? And can you give us an example of innovation, as a good example of innovation as you see it in this space?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. So yeah, hi everybody. So Pilot 44 works with a lot of large corporates to help them to understand innovation. And I guess, yeah, the question is, what does an innovation mean? And when we think about it, our focus is really about helping the corporate to see around the corners of where the world is moving towards, right? And we believe that the startup ecosystem, the scale-up ecosystem, is a really good view, because those are the companies that are on the bleeding edge, not the large corporates. And so from an innovation perspective, we really look to that market to see where the innovation is happening, what are these smaller, more agile, more lean companies working on, and how might the larger corporates typically leverage those? How can they use those potentially either as partners or as kind of a view to say, okay, well, if this is where the world is moving towards, how can we start to prepare and be ready for that? How do we strategically start to think about our role in that future space and how we can continue to play a part in it? And I think the other key thing for our clients as well is a lot of them come in because we have a lot of FMCG clients, as Michelle was listing before, And they think innovation is only linked to product, but the reality is that innovation is right across the board, right? So innovation occurs in supply chain, it occurs in R&D and HR and finance, any part or any business unit within the business. A lot of our kind of corporates have to go on this journey to understand that it's not just another product on a shelf, but also how can you drive efficiencies or effectiveness across the business. I think one of the ones that springs to mind of late, and this has been less of a concern for New Zealand given the track record you've had with COVID, but there's a strong piece of work we've been doing around affordable automation of the back-end logistics and supply chains for a number of our clients. And what's happened in markets like Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, and the like is that basically the cost of the capex for these innovations has typically been prohibitive to them putting effectively machines or robots or kind of innovation and technology in place pre-COVID, because the cost of labor has been so low in these markets. But along comes COVID, and you can't have people close to each other on a manufacturing site in the back-end logistics space. You can't have them all working in close proximity, and so many of them then decided that, okay, well, we need to move to a space where we can automate a lot of our back-end logistics and supply chains. But we need to do it in an affordable way because we can't be investing in too much. So we set out on a big piece of work for Procter & Gamble in this space to effectively enable them to automate a number of those supply chains across the kind of business, so that they're able to manufacture, produce, receive products, and then distribute them out to their kind of end clients in a much more efficient way and in a sustainable way that wasn't going to suffer from shutdowns every time there was a COVID outbreak in those markets.
Okay, and you talked about startups, Johnny. Where do you find these startups? How do they come to you? Do you seek them out? How does that process work?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. The reality is that we have a team of research analysts. Their job is to find these great companies, to research them. As many people on this call would be familiar with, is there are lots of these kind of platforms or tools out there, effectively Google for startups. Now, kind of Googling the startups or finding them is one part of it. That's the kind of the easy bit. Curating them and helping them to address the client's problem is the real challenge. Yeah. And so we always start with our client's problem. We're not really want to start with a problem and go look for a solution, which is what we believe the startup can bring. And rather than kind of meeting lots of amazing companies and trying to go back into our clients and look for problems to solve, because typically that it doesn't always resonate too much in that direction. It's typically always starts with the brief from the client. And so, yeah, we leverage a lot of networks from accelerators, incubators, VCs that we are in contact with throughout the world, and also a lot of desk research as well. The benefit is that the size of companies that large corporates, multinationals are wanting to work with are more technically scale-ups. They've had a few rounds of funding, proven tech, proven business model, and they're ready to work with a large corporate. And that means they're quite easily discoverable on a number of these types of platforms. And then it just becomes the kind of the benefit of understanding the client's brief and how those match up.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Johnny. We'll return to maybe to some of these themes a little bit later. I'm going to introduce Yara to come in and talk now. Now, Yara is a large multinational company, and we know that multinationals have a really important catalytic role to play in stimulating innovation, and we see that play out in a lot of similar economies to New Zealand, or the small advanced economies. One of the challenges we have in New Zealand, we know, is that the depth perhaps of multinational engagement is something which is not as great here as it is in some of the other countries that we might seek to compare ourselves with. But I just want to bring in Yara now to talk about perhaps that same question that I asked with Johnny first. What does innovation mean to a multinational? But also just bringing in an example of how you view of innovation and how that actually works within your organization, how you bring some of that external or outside in thinking into your organization. So one if Michael or is it David or Clive, could one of you could please talk to that, some of those questions. I got there, and I'm just waiting for somebody to answer.
You're on mute, Michael.
Sorry about that. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, innovation is a big part of what Yara is focusing on, and certainly in the last probably couple of decades. But yeah, what do we see as innovation? I mean, it's really meeting the needs and the unknown needs of customers. It's adapting and addressing to global trends, and I mean, that's, you know, there's some big challenges there at the moment, and you know, it's part of our aim that we lead these lead addressing these trends, solving problems on a global and on a local scale, extending Yara's core business from our traditional business, and that's including you know, challenges around carbon, food chain, sustainability, and meeting sustainability targets of our customers, helping our customers meet these. So we're continually looking to improve agricultural productivity and leveraging new ideas. Maybe if we could go to Clive now, and one of the innovations we've just brought to New Zealand this year is the Yara N sensor, and Clive's had many years experience in UK and Europe. So if we could jump to Clive, and you know, it's something that we think is pretty exciting.
Is it something you want to do now, Graham, or you want to
Yes,
bring that in?
yeah, no, bring Clive in now if you like. Yep.
Hi. So do you want me to share my screen, or have you guys already got the
Yeah,
slide?
look, Clive, if you'd like to share a screen, just if you can, just a couple of slides or just a brief introduction to the N-Sensor project would be great. Thanks.
So if the technology is working in the UK, you should hopefully.
It is working here too. Well done.
See my screen. If I just try and make it full screen. Failing that, I'll leave it as it is. So, so the concept, the N sensor, it's new to New Zealand. It's something that Yara developed, in fact, over 25 years ago. So innovation in Yara has been going on from an awful long time. And as we've already just talked about, you know, it's understanding some of the client problems. Yara had a real vision on understanding the challenge environmentally in Europe quite some time ago on how nitrogen could be better applied. And the technology that's needed then to apply that nitrogen is something that was a challenge. So they looked at different technologies and ultimately developed their own remote sensing system to deal with the climatic issues that clouds challenge satellites with. You know, we can look at remote sensing from space, but obviously if you've got clouds, you need to be on when the conditions allow and when the crops need it. And if a cloud is going to, or a cloudy period is going to restrict your timing, and timing is next to godliness. So my wife keeps reminding me that we really need to make sure we get things on in the right times and the right conditions. Obviously, innovation for a company like Yara is really important, but equally, collaboration is also important too. And what you know, a lot of companies find it's understanding the client problems, but delivery to the client is equally as important. And some of the big challenges that you have with technology and innovation is that it's hard to integrate, it's hard to get out onto farm, and it's hard to get people to understand how to use it. So the concept of the N sensor is very much a partnership in a lot of respects. It relies on innovation by Yara, that fantastic innovation linking back to their agronomic know-how and fertilizer expertise, and then working with partners in different markets to then deliver that solution onto farm with local understanding and local knowledge. And the example from the UK is obviously myself from Precision Decisions and Map of Agriculture, where we're working with Yara here in the UK to deliver the sensors to the farmers here, and supporting Yara New Zealand in their emerging steps to bring the technology forward. The concept of the technology is very simple. It's on the go. It's taking readings of from the tractor cab instead of from space, allowing real-time decisions to be made that overcome some of the challenges that you might have then with GPS equipment or GPS positioning, or with remote sensing, as you can see in cloudy conditions. The sensors seeing areas either side of the tractor, it measures how much nitrogen's in the plant and effectively uses the plant as a sensor to understand how much nitrogen is within it. And then from there, it's then connected to different vehicles and application equipment. So just very quickly, the sensor sits on the cab roof. It connects to a terminal in the tractor cab, and this is typically where we come in with our expertise. We are the connectivity specialists, whether that be with the data that comes on and off the machine, but equally then to the linking it and making it work with different spreaders, sprayers, and controllers. The systems all linked together, and it updates the systems once a second. And the concept is quite simple. Instead of using some handheld devices that Yara developed other innovation like the N tester, we recognize that nitrogen supply across a field can vary hugely. And the challenge you have with nitrogen that supplies that vary across a field is how you then meet those requirements. What the sensor does is it identifies the end response function for each part of the field as the sensor goes over, and it's then applying nitrogen to that crop as it goes through in real time. And essentially what it does is it measures two different parameters. So it's measuring the crop chlorophyll content, the crop nitrogen uptake content, and biomass. And from the biomass data and chlorophyll content, it can then make recommendations on where nitrogen needs to go. So if we're getting to positions where we're restricted in nitrogen application rates and how nitrogen is applied, then the N sensor offers a perfect opportunity to really challenge and target where that nitrogen is going to those areas that are most responsive to nitrogen requirement. And that's it in a nutshell. And
so, Clive, is this a technology that's come out of Yara in your labs, or have you, as I say, an example of where you've had input from other organisations to help develop that and or add on to this and complement it in terms of its delivery?
So the innovation's been purely Yara innovation. It's obviously matured as a product, and that maturity and its experience have developed through working and understanding partner requirements and needs for connectivity, for collaboration. But all the development of the sensor technology and the concept of variable rate nitrogen really came out of Yara, and I've always respected and been in awe really of their vision to be developing this technology 25, 30 years ago when the project first started. You know, to have that vision so far ahead of time is quite impressive.
Okay, and so from a perspective of organisations like Map of Ag and that, what do you get out of working with partners like Yara?
It's a win-win situation from our perspective. We're obviously a business that's quite diverse. We work going down the farm drive, but also behind the farm drive, and often the big challenge that farmers have is that they're overwhelmed with data systems. You know, as a farmer, when I sit on my farm, I've got 6 or 7 bits of software I use. If I go to mobile devices, I've got probably a thick end of 20 apps I can use, and none of them speak to each other. And the big challenge that we have as a farmer is that the farmer himself ultimately becomes that integrator of technology and information. So if we're wanting to get the best out of our technology and integrate it properly on our farms and use it responsibly, the ability to apply a product, to then qualify how it's been applied, to then measure that against its performance in field with yield data or combining technologies becomes a real challenge to a farmer. Where companies like Precision Decisions and Map of Ag come in is we support the connectivity on the devices in the field and then the linking of the data in the background. So we can join the data systems together and really support the farmer to get the best out of some of the solutions that he's wanting to use.
Right. So very much getting that integration story.
Absolutely.
I'm hearing here.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to Michael and David. Are you? What do you see as some of the the opportunities for innovative companies and startups and that to work with Yara? Is there? Could you just talk to some of those areas of how you engage with that innovative community?
Hi, all, David here. I guess one of the challenges we all have is that no one company has all the answers. I mean, we've had over 100 years experience with selling fertilizer, and we're one of the pioneers, I guess, in the industry. But we're sort of getting to the stage now where it's not just about selling fertilizer. I mean, we're trying to sell solutions to a farmer. There's a lot of challenges there at the moment that weren't perhaps there, a few years ago. So now there's a lot of constraints on farmers. Having a lot of regulations thrown their way in terms of about fertilizer use. How do we best put fertilizer on? There's farm management plans now having to be put in place to basically, practice farming. So, I mean, with the end sensor, we've got the handheld end tester, we've got those sorts of tools, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. A good example of collaboration, I guess, if I talk about in New Zealand, we have both the world barley yield record and now the wheat record. And both farmers at the very beginning said, we need to surround ourselves with people who are experts in their respective areas. So they talked to us about, can we please do the agronomy or the fertilizer sort of inputs? And then they talked to the seed companies about who's got the good genetics, the good breeding for a variety that has the potential to yield well, that has good disease characteristics. They got an agrochemical company involved to look after the crop protection, machinery people, irrigation people. And so at the end of the project, I mean, they both got across the line and they still hold the respective records, which is good. It's always that little sort of friendly competition between New Zealand and the UK. So I think to me that's the thing, that we all need to surround ourselves with sort of partners or people who can try and deliver the best outcome for the farmer. We have very, very strong agronomy expertise, but there's other parts to it that need to come in, to help.
Okay. Well, look, I'm going to pass on to Gil now from Sprout. And Gil, your New Zealand organisation working with small startup companies and in this agribusiness sector. I'd really like to understand from your perspective, what are the real pitfalls here? What are the challenges for small companies? I mean, and are we growing enough of these small companies, and what are we not doing that we should be doing to get more of them engaged with both the Yaras of this world and some of the other international connections and partnerships out there?
Thanks, Graham. So as it's almost summer break, I'll start with golf. And I'm a terrible golfer, but someone helped me once. I tried a little bit. It was actually in Florida and was hitting the ball as hard as I could. And it went all over the place. And in Florida, it's quite dangerous doing it. There are crocs there. And this guy told me, you don't need to hit as hard as you can. You need to understand where you want to be and plan backwards. And that's something I couldn't do it in golf, but it's a great lesson for a lot of the startups we work with. And in fact, with a lot of the organizations we work with, and everyone needs to understand what their strengths, what their assets, what their limitations, and where they want to be. Especially if a startup wants to raise venture capital, you need to understand, you need to look like a company that raises venture capital. And maybe that's not the right way for you to grow. And maybe you need to grow organically, you need to grow slower. It depends on your business model, the potential economics. And that's what's great about what we can do with Sprout. So Sprout, we wear two hats, just for those who are not familiar with us. We have both an accelerator and an investment business. And the accelerator is our vehicle to experiment with young companies and to help them understand better where they want to be. And when you know where you want to be and who you can be, then you maybe add partners or add resources, add people, add co-founders. And you also understand how, in what way you can engage with these big, scary things called large corporations that are great source of money, revenue, but also can squash you by mistake in a minute. Leading, unintentionally leading you on, but let's progress, let's do this, but the time it takes them to progress is endless, and you need a lot of champions. So I guess, in my opinion, the biggest pitfall is not understanding where you're going. Not to say that as a startup, this is where you'll end up. Most likely you won't end up there, but as long as you have a plan, and then you understand what are the next steps and how you do it, and you understand how you need to look in order to get there, how you need to look in order to raise capital. And that's and I guess that's the first part of the question, and I've taken quite a lot of time. You asked me, how do we do enough of these? Do we have enough startups, and how can we do it better? So I'll take it's almost a volleyball set. The initial presentation by Brandon, companies but one had something to do with Sprout, and I didn't invite this. So it's, maybe we're just so great, so we meet everyone. Most likely it means that there is not enough activity here. But it was in the middle, there was something that I'd love to highlight is Sentient Bio. That's a startup that came out of Plant and Food into Sprout Accelerator, and then with really a joint effort, a joint heavy lifting, we raised money into the company. And in the beginning, someone from Sprout, Warren, was acting as a chairman and helping it grow. And then we started to beef up the team, and it's shaping up to be a very exciting startup. I guess basically taking insect receptors and turning them into putting them on semiconductors, so artificial insect nose or in taste, and it opens up amazing opportunities. And I think if I'll merge the 2 points I've made here, when you try to look at the end game, and maybe you have a few end games, you need to do it very early on. So at Sprout, we believe that partnering with research organizations and also with corporates, with some of the corporates that are here are interested in creating innovation and driving it, that's working together. And we want to go further upstream. So work with Plant and Food, work with AgriFutures, and help them as they do the research, which is what they're great in. Help them understand what other measures you need to make while the project is still in the research institute, to understand how to create enough runway and maybe pivot it in the right direction so it can turn into a venture backable startup that can grow. And because not every technology and every company fits that model, but you want to know that, and you want to pivot the business in the right direction and basically set it up for success.
All right, thank you, Gil. Look, we're about to break now for the Q&A and open discussion, but I do want to just, before we get to that point, go around the panel here and just get each one of you very briefly, top of your mind, one top tip that this audience of New Zealand agribusiness companies should take away from today. So one tip, Johnny.
Sure, yeah, I think for the corporates on the line, I'd definitely say that you need to treat innovation as kind of a journey and an experience. So often the technology or the innovation is fluid and it continues to improve and evolve over time. And so just testing it and trialing it once is probably not the right approach from a corporate's perspective. You need to test multiple times, run a lot of fast cycle experiments, with one or many partners to see what works before you then look to scale it up, right? Rather than effectively kind of trying something once, it doesn't work, and then walking away from it. Because ultimately, you know, if there's product market fit for that technology for those partners, that technology or partners will continue to improve, continue to grow. So you need to be open-minded with the way in which you approach innovation. I think a lot of times corporates, they do what we call plan and perfect rather than launch, learn, and iterate. They plan something to death and then they launch it into, you know, a large market or markets globally, and it goes gangbusters, right? And that's fine for kind of closer in innovation, but things that are newer to the world, disruptive innovation, for lack of a better term, we really need to take this more approach of kind of launch, learn, and iterate, and start to keep testing, constant experimentation.
All right, I'm going to pass over to Michael. One tip, quickly.
One tip, I think. Yeah, innovation, it should be treated as a marathon and not a sprint. You know, we're always looking for fast gains, but you know, I think sometimes it can take quite a long time to prove where you want to get to.
And David?
I think try and define the problem that we're trying to solve and keep this in focus. I mean, a big company like Yara, I mean, we're, you know, in so many countries around the world, and we've potentially got a lot of balls in the air all the time, and I think we can get sort of a little bit clouded or sort of lose our focus. So I think we need to sometimes just think of the problem that we need to engage in for New Zealand, and say, right, let's do that. Let's do the right justice by that problem and try and solve it, rather than trying to do too many things at once. That would be my tip.
Okay, thanks. Clive, from your perspective.
Yeah, there's a fantastic saying in Africa. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go further, go together. And collaboration and working together is absolutely key. And the last bit of advice I just want to leave with you is that I just want to ask you to look after those trophies. We're going to get them back before long.
No, you're not.
And Gil, I know you gave some good examples of the Sentium Bio, but just any one top headline that you'd like people to take away from today?
I think, you know, I mentioned the golf, really, for the startups, just understand, for the researchers and the early stagers, just try and understand where you want to be and then plan backwards. And it is far more helpful than just going, you know, as big as you can, because this can, you know, if you choose the wrong trajectory and you don't have enough energy, then the cross is going to be painful. And I think for the corporates, use the likes of us, the likes of pilots, to experiment, because experimenting with us, experimenting externally is so much easier, because the culture of failing is sometimes difficult to corporates, whereas that's what we do. We fail most of the time. Most of what we do fails.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thanks to the panel. And I'm going to pass back over to Michelle, who will then just explain the next stage and look forward to your further opportunity for questions and answers within the breakout session. So back to Michelle.
Thank you, Graham, and guest panelists. We acknowledge that it feels a little bit like a cliffhanger, almost like a teaser, considering that we have limited time together. So we have about 5 minutes for a quick round of Q&A. And I'm going to kick off with Brandon's question to Gil, which Gil, I know you have responded, but it would be helpful to just talk about it a little bit. So Brandon's question is your point on starting collaborating early for research interest, thinking about commercialization, or startups looking for investment?
Yeah, I think I like the African proverb of working together, but it's you know, the old school view of, you know, we're doing something secret in the garage and no one should see it. That's really I'm not sure if it was ever there, but it's certainly not here now. And collaboration is super important, and we're especially, I think, with research institutes, collaboration and really bringing that thinking of what one needs in order to turn something into a commercial business, and not just a local play. Not to say the local plays are not super important, but if you want to go beyond local, what do you need to do? What kind of platform you need to create, and who to stand on, really, so that the people who collaborate are the giants you can use as platform to go much further.
Thank you, Gil. Johnny, would you like to build on that question too?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think Gil's kind of summed it up pretty well there. I think it's kind of, yeah, look, I think it's always good if you can collaborate with, the collaboration between startups and corporates is great, provided each party is kind of bringing something valuable to the party. And I think what you need to be mindful of for the startups on the call as well is that the corporates aren't using up a lot of your time, effort, and energy. As a startup, you have a minimal amount of time or a finite amount of time and energy and runway possibly as well. So just be wise with who you decide to work with and partner with. And it sounds self-serving, but Gil's correct. Our companies are designed to be the intermediary between small startups and large corporates to help kind of cross that border. And I'd say if people like ourselves and some of our competitors here aren't involved, then I'd be questioning kind of how serious some of these bigger corporates are. I think you need to be careful that you don't get kind of caught in this kind of tech tourism or innovation theater space where somebody's just liking to show their boss that they're being innovative, but they're not actually really committed to it. And I think that also links to the other kind of key point that was raised before around starting with the problem or the brief, because if the company or the corporate can't articulate to you what their problem or brief is, then again, you're probably likely going to be ending up in a space where you're spinning your wheels, and the corporate might be using up a lot of your time.
Thanks for the reminder, Johnny. Okay, I am looking through the audience and trying to see if anyone has raised a hand. Does anyone want to go off mute to raise a question or two? Okay, otherwise, what we'll do is we will then head into our breakout groups, which I think people might be more comfortable raising their views. So we will have our event angels, Carrie and Carol, whisk us into our respective social groups. And for participants who may not have been previously assigned, please just stay in the main hall and Carrie and Carol will come to you. We'll see you back here in about half an hour and we'll be closing the session together. See you in a bit. Welcome back, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle, and thanks to everybody in my breakout team. We did have a hard finish there, as it was the same with the other breakouts. But
yes, and I'm sorry to have cut you off, Gil. I have the same challenge, Graham.
Hope it wasn't too abrupt, but we had to pull everyone back.
All right, thanks, Michelle.
Okay, well, we hope that the deeper discussions have provided everyone here with the practical insights for your teams and that all the new connections forged today will continue to be developed. So before we close, we'll just like to invite Brandon to share some insights. Brandon, I can't see you on screen, but
I'm here.
Over to you.
I just need to talk. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for a special thank you to all our guests who joined today and were willing to take part in the panel discussions and take part in the breakouts that we just had. I personally had some great insights from the discussion with Johnny there, and look forward to looking at some of the other recordings for other discussions. The whole point of these sessions is looking in an online form, which is imperfect but very useful when we're not able to physically be together, to look at an opportunity to forge some meaningful relationships. And so that's why we've controlled the numbers for these events, and we've gone out to try and find some of the international thought leaders and partners that we think can bring some good context and some good meaning to the type of things that we're doing in agritech in and from New Zealand. This is number 3 for us. So we've had some great sessions with the groups from Plug and Play, from Bayer Crop Science, and today having Pilot 44 at Yara and Sprout Agritech joining us. And so number 3 down, we've learned some things. We found them very useful sessions. We're going to sit back and look at how we continue building on these sessions and running them through in 2022. So following today, you will get a survey, and we would very much appreciate your feedback and ideas about how this type of event can be even further strengthened as we look at making further relationships. You know, in many years ago in Ireland and in many other parts of the world, if you were seeking to form a relationship, you really didn't have to go to all of the effort of actually getting to know people. You could go to a matchmaker and they would put you together with your perfect partner. That might not be the way that we do personal partnerships anymore, although I've definitely heard of people who make good credit for it. So I guess what we're looking at doing these things is trying to facilitate that type of matchmaking approach, and just have these opportunities for people to hear about what some international partners are thinking about, to pose some questions in terms of what we're challenged to do with our own businesses here in New Zealand, and see what comes out from that perspective. We know there'll be direct relationships made, and that's great. This is our matchmaking approach to try and accelerate some of that and just give some further opportunities. I would like to give a sincere and a genuine thank you to Michelle Lee in her role as International Partnerships Manager at NZTE. She spends a lot of time and has built a real affinity and understanding for our sector, and has built a lot of time using her relationships and her ability to go out and find international partners who may be able to connect here. And I think there's been some great work done. So thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you to all of the team who've been working in the background, to Caro and Kerry, and to everybody else, Graham, who's been helping put these events together. Very much look forward to seeing these going forward next year. So I wish you all well as we come to the end of this event today, this calendar year. Look forward to seeing you all next year, and please do give us your feedback on how we can continue building on these sessions. Mā te wā.
Thank you, Brendan. And thank you, everyone, for making our third and final GAF session such a fruitful one. The event is officially over, but we'll continue to leave this virtual hall open for about 5 minutes if you want to continue your side chats using the chat box or to exchange contact information. To our dear guests, it was great having you with us, and we hope that you had fun. Thanks for taking the time, and lovely to meet you as well. To our dear New Zealand participants, we look forward, as what Brendan mentioned, to hearing feedback from you as we build our schedule for next year. And we definitely look forward to seeing you in February. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, everyone.